curious what's coming up for you.
Well, I mean, inherent in what you just said is that like humans have jobs correlated with the success of that game and that investment. And
Right.
so you have to have a different sort of fundamental operating model or staffing model in order to have that flexibility. Even on a fully owned studio, if they're allocated, like if you own a lot of studios, you're probably a big financial entity, and you have ways that you allocate costs toward things that you have to forecast well in advance in order to be a predictable business. And if you suddenly say, I'm no longer doing this thing, it creates like a problem for the entity to solve, right? That was not planned. And if you're an external studio who has committed a game to a publisher for some amount of money, the money goes away if you're not fulfilling that obligation. So
Yeah.
I think what you are pointing out is a need for a really strong and protected like prototyping culture within studios and publishers that has a little bit more of that flexibility, but still within constraints.
Yeah.
But where you're not talking about like having, full human, like tons and tons of humans allocated to a thing before you've really kind of proven out some of those core risks, which ideally is part of like a actual pre-production phase of development, is getting to that place of confidence of like, okay, it's not like we're out of risks, but we think we've solved the main things that would get in the way of us succeeding. So yeah, that's I think the solve to that one, but it takes an incredible amount of discipline.
Yeah.
And it really means a like tight process on identifying what those goals and risks are and how are we going to do it. And then some sort of financial support mechanism that isn't going to, yeah, doesn't make any surprises when you do have to cancel something.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think canceling a game late in development is just incredibly hard for everybody involved.
Oh yeah. Well, and one of the this is putting new color to there's a set of problems that I've seen very consistently across studios of different sizes and all these different things. There's the one you've alluded to already several times, which is vision. Do you have a clear, concise vision? Another one that comes up quite a bit is what we started calling the rush to production. This idea of like, I want to get out of ideation and pre-production. And one of the ways I've framed that is like, look, there's a lot of uncertainty in those spaces. I think humans don't like that uncertainty. They want to get to the point where like we're just building it. We're not having a bunch of like existential threats in the form of things we don't know sitting around us. And we're going to rush to production. We're going to say like, this is okay, this is it. And then we're going to, yeah, I can't believe I haven't thought about this till now. And again, glad you're here, kind of to open up the space is like, oh, of course, if I get to production and suddenly I do have a bunch of staff and the studio or the publisher has decided to invest a bunch of money, we're all in it now till the end.
Yep.
Like it's much harder, when you're 10 people and it's not working, that's not that hard a conversation. When you're 70 people, that's a much harder conversation. We're more likely to be sunk costed into continuing and shipping. And so it's self-protective of my salary, of my revenue for my family,
Yes.
say, and like my rent check, that like we get to production because then, well, I got now 2 years of production, so at least I'm employed probably for that amount of time. Like, and so there's this sort of counter incentive in there to really acknowledging like this isn't going well.
Right.
And I think that is broadly negative because it leads to a lot of waste. Like a lot of money is spent on things because it is so hard to cancel a game late in development. It still happens, but it's
Right.
fairly rare.
Yeah.
And when it happens, everybody kind of asks this question, which is like, what went wrong? And I think that's again, that points to sort of the bias of like, well, something must have gone wrong if you canceled the game, contrasted with Supercell's much talked about model of like, hey, we're canceling stuff all the time. Like we
Right.
cancel, dozens more things than ever ship. And even after we've shipped things, we'll shut them down if they're not really working out the way we want. So even when something gets through all the gates and it's like, yep, not work. Okay, You know, we're going, and they again have the luxury of that because they're an insanely profitable company based on hits they've had in the past. And so they can afford to do that. And I think it's the right thing to do, to be willing to cut at any time when you realize this isn't a good idea. But especially when we're dealing with two different companies, um, the publisher might be fine. The developer, like, we have to fire everybody. Now again, over a long enough period of time, the publisher loses too.
Right.
But like, the more money we throw, the more good money we throw after bad, that's actually really bad for the publisher. I think of, some of the major publishers I think are struggling right now in some of these spaces. Sony, I don't think severely, but Concord was certainly I'm sure that was like a warning flare fired across their publishing department of what happened here and how do we prevent this from ever happening again. And then Ubisoft is another one I think that struggled a lot with sort of recouping what it needs to in order to continue to be a profitable company. Anyway, again, just like it's there's a really direct financial incentive for a company to push into production quickly to achieve a steady job until completion.
Right. I think, and therefore there are often a lot of incentives on the studio side to exhibit confidence and overstate confidence in development plans or production capabilities. I think now that I've gotten to be on both sides, so, I spent most of my career in publishing, but I did get to do a bit in dev. And I'm glad I did because I was one of those sort of businessy publishing people that was like, why is it so hard to like ship a game on time? Like naively, just because I had not been in it. And in
Yeah.
fact, there's a million answers to that question. But I think if I were in a position to sign a game now, I would do so with a heck of a lot of due diligence and being very, very exhaustive on the production team to understand like their plans, their risks, their risk mitigation strategies. Like I would want a reflection from that studio leader or that game leader. I would want to see what they're afraid of. Like, I don't actually want to know about like confident, quick, like give me a couple bullets on like the things that you think are no brainers, or like, let's have a conversation if I think there's something, but I want a better articulation of like, what are the actual risks, like with the project, with the culture, with the execution, with the technology, with the audience, because those are the things that we want to collectively work together to mitigate. That's where I think the publisher is not just an ally in helping you find a market, but it's more smart brains, hopefully, in problem solving for those hard times, or creative problem solving if there is like technical expertise needed or staffing availability, or being able to, like for a big publisher, pull resources across hundreds, if not thousands of people. It's like a clear advantage.
Yeah.
But a lot of times like developers want to protect their team, want to protect their game, and aren't necessarily, or maybe just frankly lack the experience because they do get so close to it. I mean, there's always that I'm sure there's like a common psychology term for it, but you're so close to the problem, you can't always see what it is. Like
Yeah.
I've talked to studio heads where I'm like, okay, you're looking for X amount of funding. Like, tell me more what that's for. Like, what are your biggest priorities? And they'll give me 4 or 5 priorities. And 2 of them, I'd be like, oh man, I would not put that top on the list. Like, you're missing these other big giant things on like the publishing or commercialization part, but you're really worried about like, I don't know, some multiplayer connectivity thing that only might impact like 10% of a total installed base that you won't know about until X future time. I don't know. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just not having the same point of view on like the whole problem space to be solved.
If you lead teams in game or software development and you're tired of wasteful and unreliable estimation, I've built an online course just for you. It's called Advanced Estimation for Game and Software Development, and it's a self-paced course with over 15 hours of content, real-world examples, and tools you can start using right away. Estimation doesn't have to be a morale-draining mess. Planning doesn't have to feel unrealistic and contrived. You can do better, and this course will help. Early access is now open with lifetime access and a big launch discount, but there's limited seats at this price point. Check it out at this URL or in the show notes below.